Welcome to Japanese 101, the next lesson. I think we're getting close to the lesson 20 mark or something, I'm not even sure. We're getting there. We are definitely getting there. And today, I have brought with me a very nice topic, namely adverbs. Wow! What are adverbs, you ask? Well, I'm glad you asked. So today we're going to talk about adverbs. To learn about adverbs, it's good to sort of remind ourselves how adjectives work. Asta Luffy Hinata Senpai. It's a lot of names there. Thanks for the follow, though. Follow, arigatou gozaimasu. By lesson 100. Yeah, I hope so, right? It's good to remind ourselves remind ourselves of adjectives to really work with adverbs. So first of all, when we talked about adjectives, we were talking mostly about words that describe nouns, right? That's usually the way adjectives are used. Words that describe nouns or things. Nouns, things. I'm trying to learn some Japanese, bro. It's okay, bro. I got you, bro. We're learning Japanese right now. Words that describe, words that, nouns or things. Words, that describe, okay? Words that describe nouns or things. So we all know the adjectives in English. Big, green, like the colors, right? Basically attributes. Adjectives are attributes, right? But now, the way adverbs work is that they're just words. I'm gonna use quotations here to just say like it's the same word as above, right? Words that describe verbs / actions. It's as easy as that. This is the number one thing you need to know about adjectives. And not only is this the number one thing you need to know about adjectives in Japanese, it's also the number one thing you need to know about adjectives in general. Sorry, adverbs, I mean, of course. This is the number one thing that you need to know about adverbs. This is the description of adverbs in basically most languages, is that they are words that are used to explain or to describe actions or verbs. To give attributes to verbs, basically. In what manner are you doing something? Explaining English grammar, speak of course, forget some terms, adjectives, but you know. Yeah, I think it's important to review so that it's clear what I'm talking about, right? So that's adverbs. That's like the overlying thing is adverbs describe actions or verbs. Let's think first of how we use this in English. So I'll make a few examples, not too many. You should catch on to this fairly quickly, and most of you maybe already kind of have an intuition for this, right? So in English, adverbs are things like, you know, what I just said earlier. Quickly. Quickly is a very common adverb. Quickly. Quickly is an adverb. Why? Because it describes an action, right? You can run quickly. You can run quickly. You can read quickly. Etc. So we use quickly to describe verbs like this. So basically, here we use the word quickly, the adverb quickly, to describe in which manner we are doing the action of running, right? We're doing it fast or quickly. Fast, by the way, is another adverb, right? So quickly or fast or quietly or all of these. In English, it's very common for adverbs to end in studying hard or hardly. Hardly studying, yeah. Basically that. Hardly is an adverb, but its meaning is quite different from hard. It's kind of weird how that works. So yeah, that's English. Let's not get too deep into English though, because things can be a bit confusing with the LYs and, you know, like how's fast an adverb even though it doesn't end in LY. Believe me, Japanese, much easier, okay? Which is why I'm going to talk about it now. And you'll see that in Japanese, it's very simple. There's not that much to look out for. Basically, since in Japanese, the way it works is always kind of like this. You have an adjective. Okay, you have most of the time, okay? You have an adjective and you just turn that into an adverb. Now, there is some extra adverbs that aren't based on adjectives or adverbials. And we're going to maybe look at some of those. But for the most part, this is kind of it, where you'll just take an adjective and you'll turn it into an adverb, okay? And to do that, well, all we need to do is look at the two big groups of adjectives there are. Someone tell me in chat, What are the big groups of adjectives? Two groups, mostly. There's, you know, some others, but like the vast majority of adjectives can be grouped into the two nice groups. What do we call them? E and na. There you go. Seductive talk already got it. And that's exactly what we're going to do now. E and na. Yes, everyone got it. Nice. So basically we have, let's talk about E-adjectives first. We have so-called E-adjectives. As a refresher, E-adjectives are adjectives that end in an okurigana I. Okay? It has to be okurigana I. Okay? When an adjective doesn't end with an okurigana I, then it's not an E-adjective. The only exceptions to that are some few like mitai and kirai and some others, but it's very rare. Most adjectives, and you can look it up in the dictionary, you go like, okay, is this word that will say like E-adjective, right? It's pretty simple. If you don't know, look it up in the dictionary. Most adjectives that end in an okurigana I will be E-adjectives. So for E-adjectives, what we'll do, very simple. We'll just take the adjective, and like I just mentioned, they end in E, right? It's very important that we have this E here. All E-adjectives must have an E like this. There'll be like some stem of the adjective, and then it will end in E. And all we do is we turn that into adjective. This part stays the same, and then instead of E, we're just gonna write ku. That's it. You're done. That's an adverb now. Okay, so this is now an adverb. Oh, I swear. Why do my neighbors have to make so much noise? A quick recap on okurigana I is. Oh, yes. So, to make this a little bit more clear. I'm sorry. Maybe I should close the window. Let me just close the window real quick. It's really unfortunate that he's doing this now. And we're back. Cuss him out. Yes, unbelievable. How dare. Let's do a quick recap. I like this song. Let us do a quick refresher. What is okurigana I? Okurigana is a term used to describe the kana that follow after a kanji to show us conjugation. So basically, okurigana. Kana written after kanji to complete the full, usually kun, reading of the word. Declensional kana ending. What that means in practice is, if we look up a word like taberu, right? Hayai. Oh, hayai is a good example, right? So hayai, okay, what Taco just wrote. This is hayai. It means fast or early. I'll write it in white. I'll write it up here. Hayai. Like this. Hayai, okay? Here you have a kanji, and this part we call okurigana, right? Okurigana. What I mean with E-adjectives having an okurigana I is that they must have some sort of separate I that is here in kana. It has to be in, you know, in hiragana most of the time. So you can write it in katakana, but it's mostly a stylized thing at that point. But it has to be a kana ending. Because you know words, for example, such as kire, right? Kire, 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 yeah, kire, they don't have that. You can see here, the kanji actually don't have okurigana. So this, even though it ends in E up here, if we look at the kanji, we can actually know that this is not an E-adjective, because for it to be an E-adjective, it relies on that okurigana. If it doesn't have the okurigana, it's not even possible for it to be an E-adjective. Because exactly for reasons like what you can see over here right now. How would you conjugate this, right? If the E is part of the kanji, then you can't just take it out of there. That's usually not how, in conjugation in Japanese, the part written in kanji usually doesn't change. It's very uncommon for it to change. You have exceptions maybe like kuru, where it turns from ku into ki or ko, but that's very uncommon. Usually, you know, you have that. If I'm reading a text, kire, do I have to know, look up? No, it's always a na-adjective. Kire is always a na-adjective. Yeah, it is never an E-adjective. So there you go. All right, that's a real quick recap with okurigana I. All right, and someone already wrote it, I think. Yeah, so Rock already kind of wrote it there. Hayaku. So now let's make some examples, right? I have some example sentences here that we can look at. There's actually one with hayaku. Perfect. Let me copy that over. What I mean is if I have appears in kana alone, do I have to know it or is there another way? Then you would have to know it, but yeah, it'd be less obvious. Yeah, it is much less obvious then. Then you would just have to kind of know that fact. Wait, maybe I can actually leave it and put it down here. Hey, Tefan, thanks for the follow. Arigatou gozaimasu. Yokoso. So let's change this. Font size 72 will do. And plop. And let's maybe use a font which is a bit easier to read. Like... where do we have it? There. Otoyamaru. There. That's the one I usually use. Alright, perfect. And moving this down. Here is the example sentence. Basically, we have Bobu wa asa gohan. This is asa. I'll just furiganize this for you real quick. Asa. Asa gohan. O hayaku. Make some space here. Hayaku tabeta. That's it. So reading things kanji is much easier for... wow, I never thought this channel takes greetings from Australia. Hello to Australia. Greetings from Switzerland. Yes. There you go. You found the channel. Literally. Bobu wa asa gohan o hayaku tabeta. What does that mean? Well, we have a bunch of things that we need to know. We have to know Bob, but that's just the name. So Bob, which is the topic here with the topic marker. Asa gohan is breakfast, right? Asa gohan, breakfast. Hayaku, this is the interesting part, obviously, so I'll make this red. Oops, this is the part we're interested in, right? Hayaku. So from hayai, meaning quick or fast, hayaku, we can mean, we would mean like quickly, basically, in a short amount of time. Bob ate his breakfast quickly in the morning. Well, it is breakfast, so you usually eat breakfast in the morning. That's kind of implied, yeah. Hayaku. Hayaku tabeta. So this just means eat quickly, right? So we have adverb immediately followed by verb. And that's generally the structure that you'll see in Japanese, is you will see something like adverb plus verb in this order, okay? And then the adverb will just describe the verb, like that. Hayaku tabeta. Pretty simple, actually. Tabeta is past because te form ta... Yes, tabeta is past here, just because that was chosen. Oops, I don't want to delete that. Bob ate... Oh, I accidentally wrote on the wrong layer. I don't know how I did that, but okay. How did I write all this on the wrong layer? That's unbelievable, actually. How do you differentiate between quickly and early? So, the tricky part about quickly and early is that... Just get rid of this again. I'll write it up here. Adjective E turns into adjective ku. Yasai. Yasai is vegetable. You differentiate between quickly and early in the fact that, well, for the most part, it has to be a little bit contextual, but what it can help you is that there's two different kanji. So when we look up hayai, so a lot of it is context, but when we look up hayai, you will see that you have this kanji, hayai, and you have this kanji, also hayai. And then it's written here, fast, quick, hasty, brisk, especially this kanji. And then early in the day is especially this kanji. But sadly, it's not always as simple as that, and people do use the first one here, this one, the hayai, they do use that for quickly sometimes. The thing that I can tell you is that the way to think about it, in my experience, is that this kanji here, let me see that I'm on the right layer this time for sure, so I don't mess things up. This kanji is almost always kind of time related, okay? This is kind of time. So whether it be quickly, it means like in a short amount of time, that kind of quick in my opinion. And the other kanji, this guy is more velocity related. So that's the general thing that I get. Even when you use these kanji with with other kanji together to form compounds. Generally, I would argue like this focuses more on the time aspect and this focuses more on the velocity aspect. So you can kind of see like that. In spoken language, of course, you just have to kind of guess. So yeah, especially the sentence 僕は朝ごはんを早く食べた. This can really mean both. So yeah, in this case, like you could argue like, okay, it means he ate it quickly, but you could also argue like, oh, it's just very early. Because 朝早く can often refer to early in the morning. So it is a bit tricky. It's a bit of a nuanced thing. You have to sort of like guess from context. So yeah, things can be vague sometimes. So yeah, that one is a bit of a tricky one. But only in terms of like meaning. The grammatical sense of it is pretty straightforward. You just take the E and you make it into a ku and that's it. Alright, let's look at some more examples here before we move on. One more that I want to look at. Plop. Let me see if we can find some good ones. There. That's another good one. Why did it not do that? Go back. I'm bad at copy pasting. If there is such a thing as being bad at copy pasting, I am it. All right, there we go. Makes sense. Good. I'm glad you got something out of that explanation. Copy pasting is hard. It's hard, dude. It's hard. この町 Again, let me furiganize this for you real quick. この町は最近 最近 means recently. 町 means town. 最近 大きく running out of space here. 大きく変わった okay? So this is our adverb. What is this adverb based off, right? So we can like reconstruct as well if we wanted to. If we recognize something like this, it's easier if you already know the adjective that belongs to it. But you can also kind of reconstruct. You can be like, oh, this could be like an adverb. And so the adjective, I would just take this ku and turn it into an e. So I would end up with oki, right? Which is exactly what we get. Oki. Like this. Oki, right? So big. Okay. What is okiku? Now this is where, yeah, bigly. And this is kind of the point that I'm also trying to make in this video, is that Japanese uses adverbs in a much more reasonable way than English does, in my opinion. And let me explain to you why. Right now you may be, but Eve, that's weird. We just said, like, look at this. It says bigly. That makes no sense. And let me give my position for why I think Japanese adverbs are easier than English adverbs. Because my whole point about this is basically that I would argue that in Japanese, adverbs are used very consistently. You want to describe a verb, right? Kawaru means to change, okay? You want to describe the way in which something changes, you use an adverb. It's very simple, right? It's really like, if you know the grammatical definition, adverbs describe verbs, then you're like, well, if I want to describe the way in which something changed, well, changing is a verb, then I would obviously use an adverb, right? And in Japanese, you can do this like really consistently, and it almost always works. You can just use like an adjective, but then use the adverb version of that. So big, oki, right, means big in a grand scale, like a lot. So 最近大きく変わった means recently it has changed a lot. It has changed in a big way, right? So in a way, this is like a very simple way of using adverbs in Japanese. You don't really have to worry that much. You can just be like, oh, okay, I want to describe an action a certain way. I'll just use the appropriate adverb and just plug it right in there. And usually it will kind of make sense and it will work. And Japanese is, in my experience, very consistent with the way it deals with adverbs. Much more so than English, in my opinion. English can be a bit weird in that regard. And I'll make another example about this in a bit. So yeah, that's the way I see it. I see Japanese adverbs working really directly, just, you know, describing verbs, just being like, I want to describe the way this action works. So I use adverbs. And that happens a lot. And adverbs are very common in Japanese, and you'll see them all over the place. Okay, now before we look at even further examples, let us look at the other group of adjectives, Na-adjectives. And now, don't worry, because lucky for us, na-adjectives are just as easy, or arguably easier even, to turn into adverbs compared to E-adjectives. So it's not an issue at all. All right, let me make some space. If you have any questions, then feel free to write them down, and then either I will get to them right away if they're right now relevant to make the topic easier to understand, or if not, then we will discuss them right after the lesson. Okay, na-adjectives. The other group of adjectives, there is more adjectives than that, but like you have like no adjectives, etc. Don't worry too much about it. Just more writer friendly, which means more stuff to read. Maybe, yeah. There is a lot of stuff to read in Japanese. Na-adjectives. All right, cool. Na-adjectives are basically just like blocks. I have a funny story. Na-adjectives are basically just like words, like unchanging words. They're just by themselves. So if you remember like a na-adjective, a good one that I often use is like shizuka, right? Shizuka is generally a pretty good like na-adjective. Shizuka. Shizuka, quiet. And it's listed as a na-adjective as well. Shizuka, shizuka. There you go. I shouldn't go up on the pitch. It's shizuka. Shizuka, shizuka. Slow, unhurried, calm, peaceful. So it's a pretty standard na-adjective. I use it a lot in my examples. We're not going to use the kanji here because it's not really necessary. So how do we turn this into an adverb, you ask? It's simple. You just take, with na-adjectives, it's actually even simpler because you have the adjective just as a block. Because remember, na-adjectives don't really change at all when we use them. You either use the copula da or this to make a statement about them, shizuka da. Or when you want to put them in front of a noun, you use na, shizuka na heya. That's why they're called na-adjectives, to recap na-adjectives. So, na-adjectives, you just have the adjective, like shizuka, and all you do is just add ni, okay? Plus ni, just the particle ni. And now, this is an adverb. Either you can look at it as this whole thing now being an adverb, or you can look at it as the na-adjective being used adverbially. That doesn't really matter in as far as how you use it, that doesn't change anything. It's just a different way of looking at it. And yeah, I leave that to you. Whichever way of thinking about it is easier to you. You could think about this, oh, if I add ni to a na-adjective, I just use it adverbially. Or you could think of na-adjective plus ni as a combination is an adverb. It doesn't matter. For all intents and purposes, it will not really change the way you end up using them. Okay, so it's mostly for you to decide which way of thinking about it is easier. If you want to keep the particle sort of as a separate thing, or if you want to just fuse it all into one thing. I leave that up to you. Either interpretation, I think, is fair. All right, so this is how we use na-adjectives as adverbs. So let's make an example. I keep putting these like way where they're not supposed to be, like in the way. Let me just do this. There we go. Now it's up here. All right, let's make an example sentence. This one I'll write myself. So we can do something like Tanaka. Red is a bit aggressive here. we don't want to be that aggressive when we write. Tanaka-san wa shizuka ni, that's the important part here. Eyes on the ni. That's the important part. Shizuka ni benkyou shiteiru. Tanaka-san wa shizuka ni benkyou shiteiru. What does that mean? Angry Tanaka-san. Yes. What does that mean? What does it mean for Tanaka-san when he is shizuka ni benkyou shiteiru? What does that mean when we say that? Does it mean anything at all? What do words mean? Let me drink some coffee while you answer that. And I can also write some furigana so that we're clear about what we mean. Tanaka-san, Tanaka-san is a very common thing, okay? So learn Tanaka-san, very common name. You'll see it all over the place. This is field and this is inside. So inside, Mr. Inside the field. Studying quietly. Tanaka was studying in Shizuka, yeah. Tanaka-san is quietly studying. Exactly, that's it. Yeah, studying quietly studying. That's both basically means the same, so that is it. Shizuka. It looks like ba. Let me separate these a bit more. Shizuka ni and then benkyou shiteiru, right? This is our adverb here, together with ni. There you go, you got it. Is studying quietly, is quietly studying. And once again, it's super straightforward. You have this adverb here, and it just directly describes us, it just directly tells us how this action of 勉強している is studying right now. How is this action executed? It's executed quietly. And that's really it. It's no, you know, it's not magic, it's really straightforward. Alright, 田中さんは静かに勉強している. And now once again, every time you have a na-adjective like 静か or, you know, 綺麗, you can just add ni. Another way of using adverbs in this manner, and it like the point where it gets a little bit confusing for English speakers is when they're used in ways where in English you would not use adverbs. But hear me out. I would argue that even in those cases, it still makes a lot of sense. And I'll give you an example where you'll be like a bit maybe, yeah, maybe you're not used to that. I will not hear you out. Damn it! So imagine you're talking to your mother or something, or your roommate, or your wife, or your husband, or whatever significant other, and you have a messy room, okay? And they say to you, 部屋をきれい、部屋をきれいにしなさい。部屋をきれいにしなさい。This is mostly maybe something that like a mother or no, actually, I mean, people in relationships could probably say this to each other. きれいにしなさい. しなさい is sort of a command. It means like, do that. So like, okay. What does this mean? Let us, and don't be intimidated by the kanji here, きれい. I used kanji here for きれい. Sometimes you'll see きれいin kanji, sometimes you won't. It's not super rare, so you will probably learn these eventually. This is just きれい. きれい means beautiful or nice or room or yeah. Room or clean adverb do. Basically, きれい. Make it beautiful. Stop being big. Stop being a big. Exactly. 部屋を. So let me just write that as well. 部屋 means your a room. 部屋をきれいにしなさい. And again, しなさい here, just a command. Do it. Oh, hey, hi. How are you doing? Right? This is like, do it. Now, the reason why I'm saying like, okay, this may be confusing is like, きれいに. You're like, okay, how am I supposed to interpret this? But really, it's just the same. It's na-adjective used as an adverb. So in a beautiful way, make it, do it, right? And then ni, 何かにする can also mean like to, like, make it into that. So it's like, it almost overlaps. If this was a noun instead, and you had noun ni suru, means to make it into that. So it even in that interpretation, it still kind of works. But basically, all we're saying is, make your room beautifully. Will this lesson be uploaded to YouTube? Yeah, they generally are. I'm a bit behind. I think I just uploaded lesson like 15 or something. And this is like lesson 19 or 20 or something. But yeah, I'm catching up. And these are on YouTube, yes. There's a playlist right here. Question mark. Did it post? It didn't post. This kind of breaks sometimes. So let me see. Come on. Connect to the API, dear thing. No? Okay. JP101. There. Alright, so 部屋をきれいにしなさい. Clean up your room is what it means. Make your room pretty. Make your room in a beautiful way again. Make it so that it is beautiful again. Kind of like that. So, the reason I think these kinds of things cause confusion is that as a general tendency, what I've noticed is that English seems to focus more on the nouns, kind of, and Japanese seems to focus a lot on the verbs. Like almost everything in a Japanese sentence revolves around the verb, the action. So when you say like, when you describe the action, you're more likely to use adverbs to just focus directly on that verb and not that much at describing like the nouns themselves. That's a bit of like a, I know it's kind of an out there kind of statement, but it's just something that I've noticed. So, okay, きれいにしなさい. And that's basically it for the basic adverbs, okay? The two things you need to know, and let's summarize that real quick. We'll probably look at some more example sentences as well in a bit. Just select this layer. The things you need to know, E-adjectives. Once again, quick summary. E-adjectives just do the following. You have an adjective that ends in E, and you just turn that into an adjective. The same root, right? You don't change anything about the start of the adjective, like if you had kawaii, kawaiku, that's it. You just take the exact same word and you replace the last i with a ku. That's it. No other changes required. Kawaiku. So this is the formation for most adverbs. Hey, Fapakung. Salute. And this is all that you have to keep in mind for the most part. Now, what we're also going to look at is there is a bunch of words that are just adverbial in nature. They aren't really based on adjectives. They are just adverbs because they don't work as adjectives. And if I show you some of them, you'll be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Because trying to use these words like as adjectives becomes weird because they just by their nature describe actions. And these verbs are, these adverbs are ones such as, just clear all this up and then get rid of this. These are words such as like takusan or zenzen, right? Stuff like that. Takusan, zenzen, right? Let's look them up in the dictionary first so that you can get a proper look at that. Takusan. You've probably heard takusan before. Takusan. So this here is, well, takusan is in Na-adjectives as well. It's also a No-adjective. Takusan is a bit of a weird word because it's kind of everything. But it is also an adverbial noun. So, again, we're in this area where now we kind of have these, Mr. Taku, exactly. We have these words that get a little bit funky because we have now words that are both No-adjectives, Na-adjectives, nouns, and adverbs. They're everything, except they're not verbs, I guess. So, takusan, when you use it as an adverb, often it can mean to do something a lot, right? And it's best to give you an example for that. So here, let me give you an example for how we would use takusan. You've probably heard takusan quite a bit in your time if you've been exposed to some Japanese. So let me see if we can do this. Right, there we go. 映画をたくさん見た。映画をたくさん見た。Let me put some furigan on that for you again. 映画。映画 means movie. 映画をたくさん見た。見た。I saw lots of movies. The I is sort of implied here. You don't really know who the subject is because it's not mentioned, but it's implied that it's I. So, I saw, or I watched, either one is fine. I saw lots of movies. What do we notice? Once again, what do we notice? English uses lots of movies, which is kind of like describing the movies. It's describing the quantity of the movies. Not so Japanese. Japanese just uses takusan adverbially to describe how much you watched, right? I watched a lot. So it's just a little bit of a difference in how you phrase these things. Just Japanese seems to be on average more likely to use adverbs in these situations, where English often relies on adjectives and other things. Japanese is just more straightforward, being like, okay, we'll just use adverbs. We'll just describe the action. At least in my experience. Okay. I saw lots of movies. I watched a lot of movies. 映画をたくさん見た. You can also say this for one movie specifically. You can say この映画をたくさん見ました. Or この映画をたくさん見た. I watched this movie a lot. So just by saying この now, we've narrowed it down to just one movie. And we can even say that we've seen that movie a lot, right? That's kind of the difference there, is that the same phrase can then apply to both a specific movie or movies in general, right? Which for English, we would have to rephrase things a little bit more. That's another interesting thing. Another one that we can use is something like, you know, I mentioned earlier, zenzen, right? Intercepted what I was thinking. There you go, yeah. Zenzen. Zenzen is also another interesting word because it's mostly used with negative verbs. Zenzen. Now, there you go. Adverb. See, zenzen is one of those that is actually listed primarily or almost exclusively as an adverb. So, zenzen, right? Zenzen. Takusan doesn't need ni. Yeah, that's the thing, right? Takusan does not need ni. It is just by itself adverbial or can be used as an adverb. Even though takusan is sometimes a na-adjective. Honestly, takusan is just a weird word, okay? Takusan is kind of a tricky word that falls outside of the usual definitions because it can be used in so many different ways. It can be used as a noun, can be used as a na-adjective, can be used as a no-adjective, and it can be used as an adverbial noun. So it's a bit of a weird word. Zenzen is a bit easier because zenzen is always already an adverb. What that also means is that just like takusan, you can use zenzen without the need for ni, okay? Because it's already an adverb. Remember, we use the ni to turn what is usually a na-adjective only into an adverb. So if something is already an adverb, this ni is not needed to fulfill that purpose, basically. At least that's the way I like to think about it, not to get confused. So, zenzen is a word that means at all, not in the slightest. And this is the important part, that it is zenzen is grammatically speaking only really used with negative sentences. What that means is some sentence that says I'm not doing it, right? For example, I can use zenzen to phrase the thing that I don't watch movies at all, right? 映画を全然見ない. Right? 映画を全然見ない. In fact, let us do that right now. Let us write that sentence, and I'll just sneakily copy paste this one and then just basically rephrase 映画を全然見ない this part. 映画を全然. You can have 全然 both in kanji or in kana. This is the kanji for it, and you also saw it in the dictionary. So I'm gonna use kana for now, it's just easier. 全然見ない. And now, 寿司を全然食べない. Yeah, I don't eat sushi at all. 寿司を全然食べない. Note that you can also use wa in these cases. 寿司は or 映画は全然見ない. Sounds really nice too. That's like a specific thing with wa is that it is often also used to mark the object or subject in negative sentences especially. Why is that? Because remember, wa has a contrastive function. It puts contrast on what you mention. So if you want to exclude one thing from all the other things, it lends itself really well to use wa. So basically saying 映画は全然見ない means movies I don't watch at all, right? Maybe you mean you watch TV shows you do watch, but movies you don't. So there you go. You don't like sushi. So yeah, 映画は全然見ない. This is a good use of 全然, right? Because now we have our adverb here. And it means not at all. 全然見ない. And again, 全然 usually, and I say this, usually used with negative sentences. So you have to some sort of negative verb. Now, this is not 100% true, and the keen-eyed among you will already have spotted that. Whole sort of thing wouldn't have imagined that combination. Yeah, so 全然 entirely, completely. 全然反対, yeah, negative context. So the keen-eyed among you will already have spotted this extremely or very colloquialism. Now it turns out that colloquially, I can't say that word now, colloquially that 全然 is actually still used with positive sentences. Now, as far as I remember, if you do this in like an essay in your Japanese class, even in Japan, your teacher will be like, this is wrong. But who knows how long that's still the case, because zenzen has found its way into everyday usage with positive sentences as well, and it's getting used quite a bit. So, and I use this myself when I speak casually. It's a natural thing to say. For example, language evolves with time. Yeet, exactly. For example, when someone says like ちょっといいですか? You can be like, あ、全然いいよ, right? Like, oh no, I'm like, ちょっといいですか? Like, well, they might not, depending on what kind of relationship you have. If they're polite to you, but you're casual with them, right? That would be like a normal exchange. Like, do you have time? ちょっといいですか? Like, do you have time? You could be like, あ、全然いいよ. Like, yeah, I have time. It's totally okay, right? It's very okay. 全然いいよ. And you can actually see this as an example here. 全然いいよ. Totally fine. Maybe don't use this when you're writing essays and stuff. But honestly, as far as general language usage goes, this is pretty common these days. You'll hear it a lot, and try not to be too confused by it. It just happens. It's a thing that happens. So there you go. Language evolving right in front of our eyes. Isn't it beautiful? But so many people do. Yeah, that thing, yeah, it's like, it's sort of these rules, but they're not really that well defined. It's the difference between takusan and oku. So I would say when we compare like takusan and oku, for the one thing we would use like let me think. Well, for once, oku is a little bit of a different word in that oku is primarily based on is primarily adverbial, whereas takusan can be used sort of as a na-adjective or a noun. So for example, we can say inu ga takusan da, right? Inu ga takusan, something like that. Whereas inu ga oku sounds a bit weird. You would say inu ga oki, right? Yeah, well actually, yeah, inu ga oki. I don't know, it's like a weird one there. There's a difference there, but I have to like think about it because oi. Yeah, sorry, inu ga oi. Yeah, you would say inu ga oi, right? You wouldn't say inu ga oku or something like that. Ayafumi-san, konnichiwa. Like they're definitely like different words, and I think it mostly boils down to like usage there, but I'd have to like think of the proper examples to really dig at what the intrinsic difference is, because they both mean a lot in quantity. Like they are similar, but they're also different in usage. You know what, we may think about that more after the lesson so that I can take more time to think about it. May have spaced out of it. So the commonality of these ones end in N. How do you know they don't need an addition? No, that's not the commonality at all. These ones you just have to know. Like takusan and zenzen, you have to know that these are like adverbial. I think takusan is more like a lot and oku is more like many. Yes, but I think that's still pretty vague, and we rely a lot on translation to understand them. I'm not quite sure what that would entail then. I have to think about it. Good question. I have to think about it. So eiga wa zenzen minai is an example of I don't watch movies at all. Okay, so there's one last thing that I want to discuss real quick, and exception adverbs, so to speak. Yes and no. These are just pure adverbs. These are just, like I mentioned before, these were words that are just adverbs by nature. They don't require, they are not adjectives that were turned into adverbs. They are already adverbs by nature, right? Zenzen is already an adverb here. You don't need ni because it's already an adverb. It's not an adjective that turns into an adverb. It is just an adverb. That's why you can just put it in front of a verb immediately without any need for a particle anything. That's kind of why. That's the way I would explain it there. All right. Let us see. Kuroya-san, reido arigato. Hey everyone. Reido, yes. Did you beat Capra Demon, Kroya? Kroya's playing Dark Souls. All right, let's look at one last example here for adverbs, which I really like. And that would be using adverbs with naru. And that's going to be the last thing that we look at for today. So how do you say that something becomes something? Raid. Hello, everyone. Yay, more people. Yes. Gather around, everyone. Open your books on page 5. Koroshimashita. Ii ne. Oh, yarimashita. Sorry, that would be yarimashita. Good job. I'm proud of you. Capra is hard. I struggle a lot with that one. And every time I see someone play, they don't struggle that much. So I feel bad. But yeah, good job. Using adverbs with naru. This is a cool one, okay? This is going to be a useful one with you. This is very common, happens all the time. Using adverbs with naru. This is actually how you say that something becomes something, okay? Let's make an English example sentence so that we can kind of know what we mean. For example, what would be a good sample? Like something becomes, and then like an adjective, right? It becomes, why am I bad at like English example sentences? It gets faster, right? It changes, it gets faster. I'm gonna use gets, and once again, it's English that's weird, okay? Believe me, because we wouldn't say it becomes faster. You could say it becomes faster, but I feel like it gets faster sounds more natural. But this is just English being weird again. I don't really know why that's the case. Why you can't use become all the time. Anyways, it gets or it becomes faster as a way that we could do. Actually, is this a good example? Because fast is like isn't fast more adverbial? Let's use something else. Let's say it becomes, let's do something that is clearly an adjective. It becomes green, okay? Or yellow or something like that. Yeah, it becomes, let's use some color. It becomes, I'll do yellow. Becomes faster would be used here in German. It becomes faster, at least in English. Yeah, it sounds weird, right? But I don't know why it sounds weird. Becomes yellow. Ninth grade essay. All right, let me just take a sip of coffee first. We can also use it becomes big, actually. It's much easier. Or small, becomes small. It gets small, it becomes small. Don't worry too much about this thing here, becomes or gets. Like, you could replace becomes or gets. What I mean is that something changes, right? It's big and then it becomes small, kind of like that. It's a change from state 1 into state 2. That's what we're talking about. And that's the kind of become or get that I mean. Become, get. That's the kind of usage that I mean. Yeah, this is becoming more difficult. Yeah, so like to become difficult would also be a good example, right? To become difficult. It becomes small, okay? So think about that. Think about an object going from one state to another. That's the kind of thing that I want you to visualize, basically. It becomes small. Okay, in Japanese, we just use the verb naru for all of these. Chisaku naru. Yeah, that's a good thing. That's exactly what I was looking for. A transition. Yeah, exactly. A transition. So what stupid guy just said there, it's perfect. That's basically what I'm trying to lead towards, right? In Japanese, all we do is we use adverb plus naru, and that's kind of it. And you never really have to think too much about it. It's whenever you have adverb plus naru, it just means to transition into that thing, to be that thing, right? Chisaku naru means to become smaller, to get smaller, right? To change into a smaller state, kind of like that. So to become small or to become smaller, each one, it doesn't really matter here. We would just say like chisaku naru, right? So let me write that in kana here. Chisaku naru. And the important part is, of course, we say chisaku naru. And why do we say that? Well, I mean, grammatically speaking, jouzu ni naru is the same as umaku naru. Yes, it's the same. Jouzu is just a little bit more formal than umai. So you wouldn't use like umai in like an essay. That's kind of the way to think about it. Like, why do we use chisaku instead of chisai? Well, it's easy because it's in front of a verb. So why wouldn't we use an adverb, right? It makes grammatical sense to use an adverb here because after all, naru is a verb. Right? So why wouldn't we put an adverb there? I mean, it's really the natural thing to do. So chisaku naru. And then we can just go from there to be skilled. Yeah. So umaku naru or jouzu ni naru, what Matrix just gave us there, is the exact same example. So let me make some space and then I'll write those down. This is the issue there is, of course, with the tricky part being that this will be read as jouzu, right? So you will read this as jouzu, like that. And it's a na-adjective, okay? Jouzu is a na-adjective. Oops, na. And then umaku. Yeah, and then umai is written like this, which is ateji. Umai is written like this. And it's an E-adjective, but they mean the same thing, okay? Umai. Umai. That's an E-adjective. These are the same, just that this one is a bit more formal, okay? That's the main difference there. This is more of a casual way of saying skilled at something. So now that we know this, we can actually use the same word to look at both cases. So just like Vatrix wrote for us, we can say both jouzu ni naru. Why? Because jouzu ni turns this into an adverb. And then once it's an adverb, we can just add naru. And then it means to become skillful, to get better at something. Become skillful at something. Jouzu ni naru. Jouzu ni naritai. I want to be skillful at it. I want to be good at it. So that's to be to get good. Yeah, like ni naru means to get good, right? To get better, to get more proficient. Whereas jouzu just means good. Just means you're good at it. It's just that's just the adjective by itself. Kaizoku hou ni naru. Yeah, exactly. Kaizoku hou ni ore wa naru. And then the other version is, of course, umaku, which we write like this. My te kanji is always really bad, so don't worry about that. Umaku naru. Once again, same principle. Now we have an E-adjective, so all we do is we change it into an adverb by changing the E into a ku, right? That's it. The first time, jouzui. Yeah, that's a very common one, but it's tricky because this is a mean one. Jozu and umai are very tricky. They're annoying. They look so similar, and it's really easy to like get them mixed up. And it's not even that. Also, even mixing them up isn't that bad because again they mean the same thing. There's just less. One is less formal than the other, but that's about it, right? So it's super easy. It's like the most mix-upable thing ever of all time. 上手になる, 上手くなる. Okay, so the takeaway for today, and we can of course now do this with most adverbs. You can say like 黄色い. 黄色い means yellow. 上手になる. 黄色い means yellow. So 黄色くなる means to turn yellow, right? And already you can see, this is why I said Japanese is really the easy language here, because we can phrase all these things just with the same structure over and over. But in English, sometimes we use turn yellow, sometimes we use become big, sometimes we use get faster. So that's already like 3 different words in there for some reason, like who knows why. So really, English, as always, is the more difficult language. So if you've mastered English already, Japanese grammar shouldn't be all that hard for you, and vice versa. If you have mastered, I don't even know if there's anyone here that is listening right now that doesn't know English, so I don't really know who I'm arguing to right now, but yes, it yellows basically. So yeah, in Japanese it's very simple to express a state change. So the way we express a state change from state 1 to state 2 is just with this up here, adverb with naru, adverb plus naru, that's it. Adverb plus naru, state change from 1 to 2. That's it. It's a very simple but a super powerful structure, and you see it all over the place. I bet you when we're playing games or reading later, it will show up. If it doesn't show up, I'll give the sub. If we don't see this structure by the end of today, I'll give the sub to someone, because this is so common, there's no way that I'll lose that bet. But yeah, this is super common. You'll see this for sure. I guarantee it. We'll see it. Bet is on, yes. If it doesn't show up, that would be quite the coincidence, actually. I'd be surprised, but okay, I mean, sure. Using this. All right, that's takeaway number 1 from the later part of the lesson. Using this adverb plus naru structure, super common, very useful to know about. And obviously, the other takeaway was how to make adverbs in the first place. And I'll do it one more time because repetition is key before we end. E-adjectives go as follows. You have an adjective that ends with an E, right? That's what defines an E-adjective. You turn it into adjective with ku. For na-adjectives, it's simple as well. You have the na-adjective, and you just add ni after it. That's takeaway number 2. 2 things for today's lesson. So there you go. That's it. Any questions right now about this specifically? Eva refuses to end the stream until we see it. Yes. Another question. Skoshi is the same as sukunai? Not really. Sukunai is usually used as an E-adjective. And skoshi is usually used adverbially. Like if we look it up, you'll see that skoshi should be listed as a adverbial. Sukoshi. Yeah. A noun or an adverb. So again, I would say the main difference being clearly grammatical, and the grammatical difference will then inform the way we use it as well. Inu sensei, yes. Have a long Inu sensei lesson than getting a sub. Yes. These gift subs will 50% off too. It's true. But the meaning is the same. Kind of. They both mean a small quantity, if that's what you're getting at. Sometimes words can mean the same, kind of, but the way they're used is pretty different, if that makes sense. Because, again, like sukunai and skoshi. For example, you would never say something like hito ga skoshi. It sounds like there's something missing there. You're missing a predicate there. Hito ga skoshi oi desu ne. There's kind of a lot of people here. Whereas hito ga sukunai, that's fine. That's a finished sentence because sukunai is a predicate, right? So sure, they're similar in meaning, but they're pretty different in the way they're actually used. Tangential question to say it can't become yellow. What we say kiiroku naru dekinai. You would use either naru koto ga dekinai or maybe more naturally narenai. But we haven't learned that yet in an actual lesson. Hey Tim, we haven't actually learned that in a lesson yet. We'll probably do that next week. I've been thinking about doing what's called potential form pretty soon, expressing the possibility or ability to do something. Narenai means cannot become. So you could say, kiiroku narenai, it cannot become yellow. That would be a way of saying that. Note that verb plus dekinai immediately without anything in between is always wrong. You can never say verb plus dekinai without adding at least like something like koto in between. And usually you would say koto ga dekinai. That's the way to do it usually. Verb, koto ga dekinai. Then you can say cannot become. Or koto ga dekiru for can become. To adverbs in Jisho, many of them onomatopoeic. There's something special about them. Not grammatically speaking, they are just adverbials. In a grammatical sense, there is nothing really special about them. Just that for some reason, these are words that end up using to and are used adverbially. Yeah, that's another thing that I can imagine. I can mention. So like, what would be one like yuku yuku to? I think is one that happens, and like another one is like dandan to okiku naru. You can have multiple adverbs describing the same action, by the way, if you wanted to. That works as well. Grammatically speaking, there's nothing really special about to adverbs. It's potential from the u-e conjugation. It's u to e, but then adding ru at the end, because u to e is usually imperative. So usually that's true, except for ichidan verbs where it's dareru, basically. But yeah. So to form the potential, we will go back to the kana table once again and look at the imperative stem, which we may as well, maybe we'll learn imperatives and potential form in one lesson. I don't know. That could sort of work out really well. All right, ladies and gents, I think that's it. I think we have talked about adverbs and we have sort of hopefully demystified a lot of them. Honestly, adverbs are kind of a thing that you'll see so often that you'll get used to it really quickly. They're not all that different from English. They do the same thing as they do in English. It's just maybe they're used in like slightly different places. But you'll figure it out. You're smart. I believe in you. So yeah, I'll see you for more Japanese 101 a week from now, which is Wednesday. I think so, if I'm not busy. I don't think I'm busy next Wednesday, so it should be fine. I have kind of exam stuff coming up, but we'll be fine. All right. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next lesson.